Everybody, welcome to another episode of Spike Week. It is Thursday, so we are drafting. And today I got a very, very special guest who I recorded a podcast with where we galaxy brained back and forth our crazy best ball ideas about a month ago. And then we did some drafts. And now Mike took a vacation and came back to something that we've never seen before in best ball, the environment that we're living in today. So I'm really happy to have Mike on to maybe bring a little bit of a different perspective to what we're seeing on, especially on Underdog right now. But Mike, thanks for joining. How are you feeling with this new Underdog atmosphere?
A little shaky because, well, first of all, like you said, I went on vacation and I come back, I do the ADP report for Establish the Run, and I see, the top 30 risers in ADP are receivers, the top 23 fallers and running backs are, or top 23 fallers are all running backs, which is like insane. Like, it's not like, oh, it's shifting a little bit. It's like this crazy dynamic shift. So one, you guys have ruined things. I've come back to this mess. Really need to highlight that it was super hysterical doing the ADP report and seeing the fallers outside the top 100. And it's all, the risers outside the top 100 is all wide receivers, except for the very top guy, which is Darrington Evans.
How does that happen? How is it? Yeah, I mean, I don't have like you have 5 times as many followers as me. Like, it can't possibly just be me. But how does and the one guy, it was like a bit. It was like a bit for me. I'm like trying to make this guy a thing, and he's the only guy who rises way up. It doesn't make any sense.
It's kind of fun. I mean, I was watching ship chasing that you recorded last night with the guys, and there was a point early where Pat Crane was like, it feels like we're drafting with all ship chasing Discord guys. And then I checked the names and it is all ship chasing Discord guys. So I do wonder if we're just like having a tight group of people that are drafting. We're not really getting the casuals and they're all jumping on board, but it's going to be fun doing this draft because I've hopped in a bunch of slow drafts now to get acclimated, but they're all early. So I haven't really experienced the full draft with the new ADP. I'm also curious to see if there's, a stark difference between the puppy and best ball mania, and because the puppy, like, everyone is just piling in entries after entries. And I think it's a lot of the people that maybe they don't have the bankroll to max the best ball mania, but they want to get in the puppy and they're like a sharper group of lower stakes players. So I don't know. Have you noticed the difference the past week with the ADPs on the mania versus the puppy?
A little bit. And that was I talked to Josh Norris and Hayden Winks the other day, and that was basically Hayden's kind of thesis too, is that all, like you said, all of us and all the ship chasing guys and all the same sick degenerates that are, hammering these drafts right now are piling in way more quantity of drafts into this puppy. And now, I mean, you want to talk about a snowball effect. Like, we've really snowballed now because it's filling so fast. It was one thing when they announced it. We're all doing a few. I mean, we can pull it up, I guess, really quick to see.
I mean, it's
93. It's 93% full right now in 10 days.
That is so nuts.
I mean, we've never seen anything like this, right? But then, so it's I'm firing more because I'm like, shit, I want to get, I want to get some of these in here. And then there's more people like me. And to your point, it's all the same guys doing the same things, just on a more frequent basis. And the ADP is just based off of that. Like, it doesn't differentiate between the puppy and best ball mania. However, I did a best ball mania draft with Josh and Hayden, and I haven't been doing any. That was the first one I had done in a while, actually. And it did feel a little bit, people were leaning a little bit more, still like a little bit more wide receiver heavy, but not to this extent of what we're seeing in the puppy. It felt a little bit more like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago drafting, as opposed to this past week is just, I mean, last night you referenced ship chasing, like, and it's a little different with the ship chasing guys because there's a little bid equity and stuff like that goes into it. But like, you're getting like Chase Claypool in the 4th round of these drafts.
That's wild. And I had hopped in a slow draft, and you'll, kill me for doing this. At the back end of the slow draft, I started RB because I just wanted to do I'm going to start RB, then pound receiver. But then I was watching a draft that they actually did on the Swolecast, and like Dobbins and Swift, guys that I'm not really on, were there at the 3-4 turn. And I'm almost wondering for the back end of the first that you do a hyper fragile draft, but you flip the order and you go like Diggs and Ridley and then Dobbins and Swift. And then you draft as if you drafted 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. And also maybe you don't have to draft as many receivers. If you're taking guys like Diggs and Ridley, I'm like a big quantity at wide receiver guy. Like most of my teams are 9 or 10, but I mean, I've looked at the data. If you are drafting very heavy early, you can take 7 to 8. So if the wide receiver stuff gets out of control where, I think you were talking about like drafting Elijah Moore in round 9 and stuff, there might be some room for like 3 quarterback or 3 tight end teams that previously were suboptimal, but now because you don't need to fill 10 wide receiver spots because you loaded up on such good guys early before the crazy run happened. There might be some different ways to attack it. The full 0 RB makes sense too then, because if you've got extra spots from not filling out those receivers, you can just make more running back bets.
That's what I think, I still haven't really even wrapped my brain around what the best way to attack this, but I think the teams that I've felt most comfortable with over these last few days, this last week, I guess, would be what you first outlined, which is still like I'm a very fragile RB drafter, period. So like all my teams are pretty like not even just like in quantity, but in name also. And I think pushing that limit, like you said, just kind of flipping that hyper fragile approach to whether it is, like you said, that next tier of Dobbins, Swift. If you prefer some of the more dead zone type guys, that I don't really like, but, in the Mike Davises and David Montgomerys and Chris Carsons, whatever, but just flipping that to those are like your anchors now. And you, like you said, you combine them with Diggs and Ridley or Diggs and AJ Brown or whoever your favorite guys are. I really like that. And then I really like another thing we talked about last night is living in this zone of like 7th through the 10th or 11th round of running back. And I almost like even if you take like 4 or 3 there and then latch on one of your later round guys and just like living in the unknown on those rookies, or like even like Chase Edmonds, who I wasn't really drafting before, but now I find myself drafting a little bit, but doing the same thing, just kind of pushing the limit on those fragile running backs.
Yeah.
So still take 4, but give me Javonte and Etienne and Damian Harris and whatever, Michael Carter. Give me those guys and like bet on a couple rookie breakouts instead of anchoring with JT and Mixon.
Yeah, JJ Zachariason just did a article and podcast on breakout running backs, and what he found was when you've got 2 running backs from the same team going in the middle-ish rounds, like 7 to 10-ish that you mentioned, the RB1 has had like a 10% breakout rate, like really smashing ADP, which is, a pretty remarkable number in that range. So, but it's been hard for me because I'm so price conscious where a lot of times I'm taking the RB2 just because I'm taking the guy later. But it changes when you can take Javonte. If I can take Javonte in 7, it's the receivers that are going where Javonte is going now are very different than they were 2 weeks ago. So now I can take Javonte. Now I can take Chase Edmonds instead of just always taking James Conner 3 rounds later. So I'm interested in trying to get some of those guys. And I know you're sticking with fragile with 4, but I mean, if you've started out really wide receiver heavy early, I mean, I think you can get up to 5 to 6 backs there. But
I think
it kind of depends
exactly
how you start. Yeah.
I tend to lean. I do take. I would say it's funny because we joke about the running back stuff and all that, and I do probably take more 4 running back teams than other people do. But I live like in the 5 range, and so to your point, like in this type of structure, that's where I'm attaching Darrington Evans, right? Or I'm attaching one of those other kind of lottery ticket guys there because, like you said, my wide receivers are so strong up front. Now give me another lot. Like I don't even really know what the probability bet on Darrington Evans or Damian Williams or whatever is. Is it all that different than the 13th round, running back or 13th round pick in general? I don't really know that it is. So like you said, at the position I'm weakest at when I have these alpha wide receivers, I do think it makes sense. And I tend to live around the 5 range, probably a lot more than other people do. One other thing I wanted to run by you is not even just with the running backs. We talked about this a little last night too. Is there a way we can change how we approach quarterback and tight end that could maybe offset some of this? Have you put any thought into like how maybe those positions impact what's happening at wide receiver?
It's tough because I listened to you and I think you made a good point about how you were saying bypassing some of the elite quarterbacks because the wide receivers are dropping off so much quicker. And again, that comes down to, if we're drafting a ton of wide receivers early, we have more spots. If we don't get an elite quarterback, we can take 3. What's tough about the onesie positions, especially tight end, is I feel like looking at the data, it's been somewhat tough to manufacture the upside. Like the quantity doesn't make up for the quality, like 3 versus 2. The win rates on 3 tight end teams where you're not taking one early actually aren't that bad than a regular 2 tight end team. So, and again, this is where the data, and you mentioned this, you can't overly rely on 1 year data because it's such a unique year, but also the landscape changes so much. You're getting tight ends now that are probably better flex options than the receivers where they're going very late in drafts, So I'm getting Hunter Henry in round 15 sometimes, like Austin Hooper's. So I can go 3 tight ends and 9 receivers instead of 2 tight ends and 10 receivers. And I don't know if I've really changed that much. I think I've boosted the floor on my tight end production. And I think that guy is going to be just as viable as a flex option, if not more than the wide receiver I would have drafted. And obviously you have to fill 3 wide receiver spots, which is part of the reason why you take so many. But I do think there's more room for changing that. Like, we have to take 2 at the onesie position. And with quarterback, it's tougher. But we love the rookies. So I've taken some like Lance Fields and then just give me Darnold at the end or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting tight end point that I haven't thought about. And I've definitely been, listening to you kind of break that down, been too stubborn on the two tight end thing without thinking about, like, it is absolutely true. Like if you've even done a few of these drafts, you don't have to do as many as like I do. You see that what you just outlined, like you get to round 15, we're talking wide receivers that might get cut.
Yeah.
Like it's like, there are, I'm not saying there aren't viable guys there, but like really like 15, maybe 16 on, all those wide receivers are the same. And good luck guessing which one is going to be worthwhile. But to your point, like Hunter Henry is there. Anthony Firkser is there. Cole Kmet is there. Yeah. Blake Jarwin is there. Like say whatever you want about those guys. But your point is like, it's so true. Like I would bet on them as better flex options. And so that isn't like you said, they're not filling the 3rd wide receiver spot, but there's a fairly significant boost in the fact that, in the years past, we would never even consider talking about those tight ends in that range as flex options. And now we kind of are. Like Hunter Henry could lead the Patriots in targets, and he's going there. So that I think that's something I'm going to dabble in.
You probably give up a little bit of ceiling in terms of like, someone like Nico Collins could, break out, and these tight ends, they have a capped ceiling, but if you look at the probability of the bet, it becomes a little bit more even where, okay, you're sacrificing your, 1% chance at a huge breakout season, but you've increased your odds of getting, a decent flex score 4 times throughout the year.
And that's just to, we'll hop into a draft here in a second, but you and I have talked about, and I've debated even like with some of your colleagues. And I think it's a hard thing that nobody has really figured. I don't know if we'll ever figure out the answer, but this idea of building to just advance, building to win your 12-team league, or building to maximize like win equity of the entire tournament. And I don't really think that there's a right or wrong answer, but this example specifically is one that I don't think is black or white. I think that you say that you might be sacrificing that 1% outcome that Nico Collins becomes like a true difference maker. But I don't think, like most people would say, my mindset would be like, no, you have to take Nico Collins. But I don't really think that that's true in this example. I actually really like the tight end thing, which, is maybe even different than I would have said originally to start the year. But it does come down to that. You don't need to hit the stone nuts. Even like I'm building for really, really ceiling outcomes, but even I don't need to, you don't need to hit the stone nuts on every single pick. There is value in this floor and more usable weeks that I would get out of Hunter Henry, even if I forego a little bit of Nico Collins upside. So like finding that blend, right? That's what we're always trying to find
Right.
that blend between maximizing upside and advancing. And so I like this concept in general. And that's the only other thing I wanted to ask you about before we hop in. Have you thought any more about this advancing versus upside type of conversation?
I think where we're aligned is, we're both trying to build monster teams, right? We really want teams that could be crushers. And to your last point, I completely agree where, a monster team, what's going to look like is you're going to get lucky on health. You're going to maybe have a couple breakout guys, but the vast majority of building a monster team is just getting a bunch of guys hitting their like 60th to 90th percentile outcomes. It's not going to be that you need everyone to hit that 1% outcome. And if you chase that too much, you start to become too fragile. I'm a little bit more on, I just want as many teams as possible to advance, just because you definitely made good points about how, this is a different tournament than last year. The size difference is, night and day from what it was last year. I'm just worried about between injuries and, the way things change throughout the year, how much we can really control that with like 3 sort of uncorrelated-ish tournaments weeks at the end.
Yeah.
And like to your point too, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I'm currently leaning a little bit more on, I want as many teams through as possible, but I say that I'm still trying to build monster teams, so I'm probably a little bit safer in my drafts than you, but still way more aggressive than probably the average drafter.
Yeah. And I think like I said, and you said, we haven't figured out, and it's going to be a long time probably before we figure out, just because the NFL sample sizes are so small. Like, we don't know we don't have any idea what really is the optimal way to build, these teams. And I don't even mean like structurally, I mean like player archetype and stuff, right? Maybe James White is the absolute optimal guy to take in a lot of these structures. Maybe we're drawing stone dead with James White. I really don't know, but I'm trying to make my educated guess, but like, we haven't figured all that stuff out in this game like we have in, say, DFS.
And, Crane and I were going back and forth in a Discord chat about Zeke Elliott. We like to needle each other about Zeke, where his new ADP, I will say, is kind of crazy, like top 5. But one of my, did I lose Eric? So one of my things with Zeke is, Pat's thing is that Zeke doesn't have this huge ceiling that you need to justify a really early running back pick. And my point is more, well, if Zeke is just 20 points per game, he doesn't have that 25 plus crazy ceiling. A lot of Zeke teams are going to advance, and he just has to have one super good week, and all the the non-Zeke teams might be dead. So I am trying to be pretty diversified, within my structures too, just like cognizant of that facet. Where I think it was Adrian Peterson 1 year too, 2 years ago, where Adrian Peterson was like a horrible pick, but he just had the one great playoff weekend, and the 9 AP teams were dead. So I don't want to think about that too much. I don't want to build bad teams and take bad players just because, what if this guy knocks me out? But I am also a little bit more aware of maybe not needing the crazy ceiling that I would want in a managed league from some of the RB picks earlier.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's actually a big change I've made this year. I don't know how you were last year. Like, I definitely feel like I'm way smarter about this compared to last year, but like, I was very stubborn in my player pool last year, honestly, probably because I had success the year before being really stubborn in my player pool. So then last year I was a little too stubborn, and I actually think I structurally was doing some things right, but I was too stubborn on just certain things that ended up biting me. And so this year, to your point, I think I can win through structure and like archetype and that kind of thing, but I don't want to be tied to really micro decisions within those constructs. You know what I mean? I don't.
Yeah,
within
the structure. The worst thing that would happen is you absolutely nail the structure, but you took 60% Darrington Evans, and he was 0 all year long. And but
okay, we're removing Mike because he's shitting on Darrington Evans, and we know that 60% Darrington. Okay.
But you want to know where your edge is. And I thought, like, where's your edge? Is your edge in player selection and construction? And it's kind of, for me, it's the same thing in DFS. I want to maximize my edge where I think the edge is, and then sort of diversify around the edges and diversify elsewhere. So maximize the edge, diversify elsewhere. And for some people, maybe their edge is they've got this player and they want to, build 100 teams around that player. And that's not what I'm going to do. That's fine if that's where you think your edge is. But if you think your edge is in structure, yeah, I think I'll probably try not to have more than 30 to 35% of players. And I'm the reverse Davis Maddock in this regard, where I'm fine being underweight on guys and having, just I got Devonta Smith once, like 3 rounds after ADP. I'll take him. I'm okay. I'm going to end up with 2%. Like you can be underweight someone. I think you'll be fine just because, again, the edges in the structure. Ooh,
yeah.
We ran pretty pure on this draft. Looks like it's filled. Okay, 7 spot. All right.
So 7 should be pretty interesting, actually. This is the area where we'll find out quick. It really depends. Sometimes you'll see, I don't know how many drafts you've done, but sometimes you'll see the ship chasing influencer stuff is nuts. Like Diggs 3, Tyreek 4, Kelsey 5 type drafts like that. That never used to happen, right? So like if you wanted to 0 RB, if you wanted it was so easy to be flexible. And that's not the case right now, but 7 usually is still where you can be, anchor or go 0. It's usually open.
Yeah, 7's a little tough, and Kelsey's always kind of in the mix too. I know I think the idea with Kelsey would be you take him and then you just really kick the can, as you put it, on that T2 all the way down the line. But you still do you still like Kelsey one even with the tight end value? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think he's still, I would call him my 3rd overall player, but I have just experimented a little bit in the puppy with taking one of the wide receivers over Kelsey, or there's Kelsey goes third overall. There's a lot more of that, which is funny, which comes to another point. You tweeted about this, and it was so true that you posted your exposures, right? And you got a lot of Paris Campbell at a certain point, and then his price rose by two rounds, and now you're not getting him anymore, and it's naturally diversifying you. That's what's happening to me with I was hammering Kelsey in the first round for a while. See, this is absolute anarchy. But but this is just proving the point. If you take a guy where you think he's a value, if you're right, you're not going to get overexposed to him because he's going to rise in price. All right, what do we like here?
I like Big Dog here, anchor RB.
Is Big Dog your favorite out of those other? That's a good thing to ask you on here, because I don't have a strong stand on any of these other non-Dalvin CMC backs.
Yeah, he's my favorite. I just think the touchdown upside is insane. The weekly upside is there. You're definitely fighting injury with him, right? He's had so many carries 2 years in a row. It's a little bit concerning, but all these guys have risks that I think. Oh, yeah. And with the Julio addition too, it just kind of reaffirms that this Tennessee offense is going to be efficient again and good again. And that's what Big Dog needs. So even though he's game script dependent, and this is something we mentioned too, you want to draft as if you're right. So yeah, Tennessee sucks. It could go really bad for Big Dog, but we're drafting as if Tennessee is going to be good and competent on offense.
And I think, I've been stubborn. I think a lot of DFS players, I don't know how you have been specifically with the Big Dog and being a little maybe too stubborn on the whole he doesn't catch passes type of thing. But the other thing about the Big Dog is he is their offensive identity. They have to fall down by so much for him to get game scripted out, way more than we think. It's not just this game. He is game script dependent, but we see them down by 21 in the 3rd or 4th quarter, and they're still running him,
That's 100% true. There was one game I've ever seen him get game scripted out of, and it was when Cleveland was up 35-0 on him this past year. That's what it took. But there was a game versus KC last year where they were down, 10-0 versus KC, and he went nuclear in the second half. Long TD run, took a screen pass to the house. So it looks like we're in good shape to get. I guess I was going to say we should get Nuke or Ridley.
And there goes Ridley.
Okay, and they both go back to back. Would you go? I probably don't want to go RB here given this draft room. So I would go either Waller or AJ Brown and bet on Tennessee, I think I'd probably lean Waller and get the tight end.
I think Waller. Yeah. I also like this because this is a very unique start for me. I don't take a lot of the big dog, and I as we discussed on the first podcast I did with you, I'm a little lower than market on Waller. So this is nice for me to selfishly mix things up a little bit.
I noticed the other day that though I was like, at one point I was like 25% Kittle and 5% Waller.
Yep.
I was like, I need to even, this has gotten out of hand. I'm used to having like the ETR ranks, not the ADP value. So, cause we actually have Kittle slightly ahead of Waller.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah. I draft off the eight
or like very close.
That's interesting. Is that just our Niners? Is that an our Niners thing, or did you regress Waller quite a bit, or because that's kind of a lot of people are really Waller over Kittle now, so that's a little bit of a hot take to some.
I'm very worried the Raiders offense. They were top 10 in offensive yards per game. They were top 10 in points per game. I don't think they're that good of an offense. So what happens when they're bottom 10? The volume can't run more pure than it did. I think they're even. I think they should be toss-ups. I've just taken more Kittle because I've been taking so much Lance late, and I probably got a little I honestly think it's just a coin flip.
Yeah.
So not like super hot take-ish there.
And he was going, and he still is going as we're seeing. He goes several picks after Waller now, so it's kind of a 2v2 conversation between the two.
Yeah, you get Kittle in the third. Yeah, that's the other thing that happened is sometimes Kittle would fall to me in the third, whereas with Waller that just didn't really happen, which is why I've started to, like, when I'm drafting one in the second, sometimes defer to Waller, just because if I never do that, then I'm gonna keep ending up with more Kittle because the ADP is still, I think, like six spots apart, which is pretty big difference at this point in the draft.
Yep. So here's a question is, I think we both agree this is probably a wide receiver here. Do you have any typical like preference, not like on a specific wide receiver at this pick, but are you just like totally staying open and flexible from here on out? Like, are you open to an elite quarterback? Are you just completely kind of just taking the board as it comes, or do you have some sort of like plan of attack in mind when you start without a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds?
Yeah, I'm pretty flexible. I know I'm going to take 9 receivers on this team probably because I'm already 2 tight ends. There's no way I'm taking more than 5 backs. I would take, Cooper or Lamb here.
Do you have a preference between those two?
I have Cooper slightly ahead, but I guess but Lamb's like, if you're trying to, we're not going to get both in this room. So I think I'd go Cooper.
Okay.
I think they're both great picks. I'm surprised the Lamb ADP is as high as it is, just because, Cooper's 27. Like, those are peak wide receiver years. He's not declining. His targets the first 5 games with Dak were insane. But back to your question, I'm pretty flexible here. I could still take elite quarterback, and then I know I'm getting 10 wide receivers. With what we've talked about, I'm probably would only want that elite quarterback if it really fell. So you're looking at Dak more like, does he fall to me in 6 versus getting him in 5 based on kind of depending what's there. And then
he has been a little bit. I don't know if you've seen that for you at all. And that's where I really, and maybe we'll get to that point. That would be a good discussion point. I get there and it's like, I still feel so uncomfortable with what's about to happen at wide receiver. I'm like, well, the Dak is such a good value here. But, to your point earlier, I always have those rookies in my back pocket. It's like, do I really want to give up the wide receiver that I have here? It's become a real, like, almost like a chess match in these first like 8 rounds.
And the best ball balances things out so much too, which makes it such a great game. We're talking about being anti-running back in best ball in managed leagues. Running backs are 10 times less important than best ball, in my opinion, the way I approach it. And then same thing with quarterbacks. It's a very different dynamic. So that's why I like best ball so much. I'm open to like at some point, like if Swift falls to like mid 4, I might take Swift and do a hyper fragile. He's gone, but I'm probably not stretching on. I'm definitely not stretching on Carson there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten much Julio. That's something I should probably change. I have a ton of AJ Brown. I know you tweeted out about not being overconfident in some of these wide receiver rooms where it could really go either way. I got kicked off ship chasing for even suggesting Julio had a 20% chance to out target AJ Brown.
Clearly, you're not allowed to talk bad about people's favorite Tennessee Titans, is what I figured. I bet on one of your ETR shows, if you talk about the big dog, Evan will kick you off. I kicked you off for talking bad about not having 60% Darrington Evans, and I think I have 40. So I was like, hey, let's, we're not allowed to talk about that. And then okay. AJ Brown.
I'm like pretty locked into Godwin or DJ Moore here.
Do you have all right? Both are there because Miles goes. Do you have a preference?
God, I don't have a preference between these two. Do you?
So as painful as it is, I prefer DJ Moore. Gretsch has really sold me on DJ Moore in this tier. Do you mind? So I'm going to take him.
I'm totally good with DJ Moore. I'm looking at our rankings on ETR, and like they are side by side, and I think we have Godwin one spot ahead, but we've got the ADP baked in a little bit, and he has an earlier ADP, so that's part of it. I think they're both phenomenal picks. I think Moore might have a little bit more of that crazy ceiling in him, or if he just like turns into the huge alpha there, I could see that. Whereas Godwin might be, I don't know, because Tom spread the ball around a decent bit last year, and you just don't know if you're going to get it condensed as much as you want it on Godwin. And that's like nitpicking, but
right. We're definitely, all the wide receivers in this tier are pretty awesome. So you're totally nitpicking, but
this room feels split, and I think that's good for us.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Well, I want to talk about DJ Moore real quick. And then that point that you just made is like perfect. And that's what I think people are screwing up in this new environment. They're middling. Everybody is middling because they feel the wide receiver panic, and then they start to feel uncomfortable, right? Like we talk about like all the time, like you have to be able to feel uncomfortable and like be okay being uncomfortable, kind of like in DFS. And I don't think people have got to that point yet. So then they middle it, and then that's where the fragile teams really take advantage, right? But on DJ Moore, kind of how Gretsch puts it is in a way that we would think about it again with more of a DFS background, is that like the other guys like almost can't burn me. Like I love Chris Godwin. I love all those wide receivers in that tier. But like, even if DJ Moore doesn't have the crazy upside ceiling, like we know he's just going to be fine. He might lose to those guys, and they might have a higher probability of hitting hitting that median outcome. But he has, let's say, a 5% chance of hitting this ceiling, like you said, that just like these other guys don't have. And that, they're down in it. Like the things that would have to happen for Godwin to like be the wide receiver 3 overall are like really, really unforeseen. DJ Moore is just like, what do we really need? Him to continue to be DJ Moore, and like maybe Sam Darnold's just better than Teddy. Like, it's a more reasonable case for him to be that guy. So.
Yeah. And you start to see where it gets a little bit tough here. This wide receiver spot, we're just going to miss kind of on a group we would have preferred. I would have smashed T. Higgins here all day. I'm probably still going receiver here. This is a case where we've talked about Mike Davis. Like if he came back in 6, I would be tempted.
Yeah.
But
so Galladay goes.
But we've got Javonte. We've got there are other guys there, and so man,
is Odell or Claypool?
These are my top 3. The top 3 we have here. I think I'd probably swing on Claypool here, but
I agree.
I wrote an article about undervalued wide receivers, and the 2 guys I talked about were Odell and Robbie. Their ADPs have since come up a little bit. Like you used to be able to get them around 7, so it was somewhat a different dynamic.
Yep.
Can you go to running backs real quick? I know it's like if your screen will let you click on running backs.
I have a block. You can't see it, but it sends me an alert. Like, are you okay? Is someone else at your desk every time I click on running back?
So the one thing we have to be cognizant about with this new ADP is we're only ever taking so many running backs. That's why it's easier to keep stockpiling receivers, because we almost don't care. Like we won't stop. Whereas running backs, if I think Mike Davis is a great value in round 6, and then Javonte comes back in 7. Like I can't take him. Like structurally, I can't do it. Like I have to stop at a certain point. So you do want to be careful with that. I would probably take Etienne or Javonte in the next round and do a 4 RB build if they were there. I like Hunt too, but he's really, I don't know. At that point, I'd probably risk him even dropping further. Let me see the receivers again. There might be a receiver cutoff point too, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how you feel about these receivers where they start to all become really like the same. And so that's when I like your idea on ETN or taking the swing on ETN or Javonte or something, because I'm not sure that there's that big of a difference between a lot of these wide receivers.
Yeah. Which in past drafts was great because you would take the swing and then you just get these receivers. But if people keep taking the receivers, it gets a little harder. Okay, Hunt goes. I'd probably take the Eats. I don't know if I'd take. Do you like Javonte or Etienne more? I think I like Etienne a hair more, but it's pretty close.
I go back and forth every single day, and I think today I woke up and I think it's Etienne.
Okay, let's go Etienne. We're good on the bye week there, right? Yeah, we're good on the bye week. Okay. So we're definitely only going to do 4 running backs. And this is where I'm with you. We'll probably go really fragile on our last 2, especially with the way the wide receiver stuff has been going. Can you go to quarterbacks? I just want to.
Yep.
Okay. I've started to sour on Herbert a little bit.
Same.
I did a podcast with JJ Zachariason. And it's like all the top guys either are on offenses that are going to be super good and pass the ball a ton, or they run a ton. And Herbert's kind of neither of those things, which makes me think it's a little more fragile than it seems.
It really is. And like, I don't think it might have even been that podcast that you guys did that kind of really made the light bulb go off for Herbert for me. And I don't think I was taking a ton, but I kind of considered him in a tier with some of these guys. And I don't really know that I consider him necessarily, like, I think he's closer to Hurts and like Burrow and stuff than he is to Russ and Dak. And I don't think I felt that way even like a week or 2 ago.
This is also a team where we probably want a rushing quarterback. Our stacks don't look promising to start, but that's okay. We've talked about that. Like you can't panic. We've got the backdoor rushing quarterbacks if that happens to you.
And you always have, even though sometimes I do screw it up, but like basically, and the Cowboys are a bad example, I guess, but basically every team has some sort of backdoor guy that you can latch on to stacks. What, like you said, whether we're picking up somebody late or it's like, oh crap, let's take Zach Wilson and Keelan Cole. Like I'm not excited about that, but like it's available to us later.
You mean Zach Wilson and Denzel Mims, but yes. Oh,
God, you guys got to give it up with the Mims thing. Every time I go on
drafting Keelan Cole though.
Because I like the guys that score more fantasy points than their teammates.
I thought we were all about upside on this show.
Okay, so I do think the Jets is the situation that is fragile, and we have absolutely like I love Elijah Moore, like, and I have liked Mims' talent or whatever up until this point, but I don't have any idea how that wide receiver room is going to shake out, and so I do want to take some darts on Keelan Cole, like Jamison Crowder, when I need like the backdoor stack. I'm not going out of that's really the only time I ever draft Keelan Cole is to latch on to a stack. But I just don't want to be overly stubborn on those uncertain situations is really all my point is, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. I feel like with Mims, he had a somewhat promising rookie year, which given his profile, we saw some of the things we wanted to see out of him. And I get the new regime might not like him, but sort of just a bet on. I mean, he's free right now. I was definitely taking him
totally free
to start the year, but he's like an 18th round pick right now. Okay, wide receiver. God, these freaking round 7 guys every draft I'm in, but it's got to be Juju or Chanel. And I don't even mind stacking Pittsburgh.
I was gonna say, do you
Juju here?
Like just stack Pittsburgh if we really have to use Ben later, like that's certainly not ideal, but also like if you stacked the Steelers last year without Big Ben, it was like a printing press.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so like, that's what another thing people will be like, oh, I got these 2 Steelers. Now I gotta go get Big Ben. Like, you don't have to. You still are. You're getting basically all the benefits of the stack, whether or not you have Big Ben or not.
Yeah, Ben's like, oh, we definitely need a third quarterback. I guess we'll grab Big Ben.
Right.
You know, that's where we're at with him. All right.
This isn't as bad at wide receiver as some drafts.
Yeah, I know. I can see where things would get hairier, like where that ATM pick would really kill you if it was worse here. But we're gonna end up, I think, okay, like just okay enough here.
Yep.
And we don't need a second tight end forever, you know, around 15, 16-ish. We don't even care too much about our third and fourth running backs.
Yeah, see, this is nice. So you're you know, when I kind of asked you about if you have any sort of plan of attack, that's all this was like staying open and flexible. It was like, okay, it looks like we're going to be okay at wide receiver, so we can take this shot on ETN. But if it was like, oh shit, everybody's taking all these wide receivers, we can't afford to fall behind, then we wouldn't take ETN, and it's kind of worked out for us.
Yeah, the nightmare scenario is you take ETN and then, you know, the next round, Javonte Williams, Chase Edmonds, all those guys are there. And I think the only one that was still there was Sermon, who I like Sermon a lot, but I do think he's a tier below those guys.
Yeah, this is interesting.
I wonder if people are going to panic on Hurts with the Deshaun Watson rumors.
He's already started to fall a little bit. I just took him a couple times in the last day or two, and I wasn't really targeting him before.
So I like Jarvis Landry. I know he's a little bit boring. I think if we want more upside, we could go Antonio Brown. I'm good with either of those guys, Jarvis or Antonio Brown.
That's a really good question.
Do
you have Jarvis higher?
Miami guys.
Yeah.
We've got them 84th and 85th in our ranks, and I've got me personally. I think I'm a little higher on Antonio Brown than like Evan is, just because I think the base value and the contingent value is maybe higher than people have come around on him. He's been one of the bigger ADP risers over the last month or two, but they're going to put up they have like the highest average team total across the season. They're going to put up points. He was, I think, 3rd in targets per route run last year. And I mean, he's going to play. I'm not worried about Scotty Miller. I don't know. I think he's going to be the 3rd wide receiver, get you 15% of targets and be fine there. And then if Evans or Godwin gets hurt, it could be, real smash.
I think that wide receiver room I've probably been too stubborn on a little bit, just because I'm lower on the Bucs in general, and I was last year, and it probably didn't work out for me, but I am kind of lower on them in general than the market is this year. But to your point,
Brady,
it's kind of, oh God, Brady. Yeah. If I lost so much money betting against Tom Brady last year, that was absolutely miserable. And clearly people like your colleague won a lot of money betting on Tom Brady. So I took a huge fat L, but that's also like the point. I shouldn't be stubborn. No one should be stubborn when, like, especially I'm touting like, dude, we still need to draft the Cowboys wide receivers at cost because we know the offense is going to score points. And if somebody goes down, their upside is unreal. Well, the Bucs are it's the same thing, maybe a few less points, but it's literally the same thing.
So I think at this point, with not having great stack options, I'm really going to wait on quarterback. If we had gotten T. Higgins in round 5, I'd be, or Boyd, we almost got in round 7. I'd be a little bit more open to swinging on Burrow here, but I don't know. I think it's still wide. Can you go to wide receiver? I think we did. Yep. We might have just hit another like tier drop off here. Yeah, this is the tough spot, huh?
Yep. This is round 9. Did you ever think you would be talking about Darnell Mooney versus Russell Gage versus Elijah Moore in round 9 of a best ball draft?
Usually I'm taking Fields before Mooney.
Now you have to galaxy brain. I had to talk to Davis about this the other day, and he's like, I can't take Darnell Mooney. I'm like, I get that, but if you want to have field stacks, like you have to suck it up sometimes on like it's the same thing. I love Elijah Moore, but round 9 is really steep. But it's like if I want to get Elijah Moore and I want to have some jet stacks, sometimes you have to suck it up and take some of these guys.
I also feel like our draft room split a little bit. We got to pay more attention. Like the ship chasing guys are at the first half of the draft, and like the ETR guys are at the back end of the draft. So we know where the receivers are going to go.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Look at the running backs here. I mean, Henderson in the 9th, that is pricey.
Okay, so I think I would take, I mean, Hardman's gone, right?
Yep. Mooney went.
Mooney just went. I was going to say I would take Mooney and set up, the backdoor stack.
Yep.
Good Lord, this is bad. Corey Davis, Russ. I take Rondell maybe here. Rondell or Elijah, probably.
Do you have a preference between
I like
those
Rondell.
two?
I like Rondell more.
Yeah. Definitely support Rondell. I don't know if you or people watching listen to Gretchen Siegel's podcast, Stealing Bananas, but Elijah and Rondell were both on there, but they talked a lot about kind of like trying to identify the types of players that break out, right? Like RotoViz does a lot of really good work on that kind of thing. And ironically, both Rondell and Elijah were the type of guy targeting the guy who just far exceeds expectations based on, a number of different variables and both of those guys. So I'm doing that, what you said, like, just kind of whoever's here. Sometimes I might need to set up a stack. Sometimes I don't, and so just taking Rondell, Elijah, Mooney, Corey Davis, whatever. They're all pretty much the same bet.
Yeah. I mean, you got to work with the cards you're dealt, whether you like it or not. You got to make it work. And I mean, the running back groups are still pretty healthy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind getting one of these next 5 guys, but I'm definitely going to wait till some of them start to go. Like I know we all like Pollard. I'm on the AJ Dillon train with you guys. I like Rojo as one of my more own backs. I don't know how you feel about Rojo. I do like Rojo.
I like Rojo. The only problem for me is I never get Rojo because I take Pollard, Dillon. I think just Pollard and Dillon ahead of him. And so he goes around here, and then like I'm taking Pollard in the 10th, and so I don't get that much Rojo.
Yeah. Can you click wide receivers?
Nobody really went off the board since at wide receiver. Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally nobody.
All the zero RB drafters started. Oh, no. That's the other side. So what do you usually do here? Like, would you go? I know we talked about going really fragile with our 3rd, 4th RB. Would you take one of your favorites here? Or like, I kind of like Rojo or Dillon.
Yeah.
Before it drops off.
I think having 6, allows us to go Rojo or Dillon.
Okay. I've got Rojo higher. I like Rojo more. My weeks are good, right? Yeah. I think Rojo's the classic case of, sometimes in DFS too, where we worried maybe too much about the absolute stone nut outcome, where if you just look at Rojo's season from last year, I mean, that's all we need. We just need Rojo to repeat last year. And I mean, they were talking about maybe Fournette getting cut, had Rojo not gotten COVID towards the end of the year. So a team that's going to score a bunch, that's probably going to have a good game script. Rojo could have a lot of 102 weeks, even if he doesn't.
He's another. It's just another guy that, like, when you just take a step back, you remove the names, you remove a lot of the contextual factors, which I know you can't just remove it about the Bucs, but like you said, maybe the best defense in the NFL, maybe the best team. Well, I mean, they won the Super Bowl, and so they're right there as one of the best teams in the NFL. The weapons for days, they're going to score a ton of points. Like you said, they're going to, because of that defense and the amount of points they're going to put up, they're going to play an amazing game scripts. And so it's just like, same thing. Like, I just want to spread out my bets, and I think Rojo's going too low. Like I said, I have a serious problem with like the Tony Pollards or whatever. It's a little bit of a personal issue that I have. But I think the usable week thing, like Hayden Winks from Underdog posted like a really nice viz yesterday on usable weeks. I think Rojo has a lot more usable weeks and spike weeks. He has way more usable and spike weeks than anyone gives him credit for, because we think like, oh, he's so game script dependent. He needs to run for 102, which is true, but he's a lot more usable than you think he is.
Yeah, and my higher owned backs, I mean, backs that I own like at par with the market or higher, like all the ones you guys listed, AJ Dillon, Darrell Henderson, Alexander Madison, Tony Pollard. I'm less worried about the usable weeks at running back, in part because I am generally drafting a little bit more premium running backs than maybe the ship chasing crew is, but I'm with you. Like, things are going to happen. Like, and this also fits JJ Zacharyason's breakout. I mean, there's 3 Tampa Bay running backs being drafted, 2 of them around 10. It kind of fits. If you're correct on who the RB1 is, it fits pretty perfectly. We should probably, what do we got going on it? Yeah, I was going to say we should probably I think I would go Fields here.
That's what I was gonna ask, is how do you
Fields versus Lawrence? I want Lawrence stacked a little bit more than I want Fields. I know they both run, but
there's no backdoor stacks for Lawrence, really.
Yeah, I mean, the backdoor for I got Komet in like round 16. Like, we can backdoor Komet and at least get a single. And yeah, there's nothing for Lawrence because there's no tight end that you can use, and all 3 wide receivers have already been drafted. You could even, if you really wanted to get saucy, I mean, I'm sure you could take Demir Bird or somebody shitting around 18. I haven't done it. I have.
And there goes Lawrence.
I think Fields. Yeah, I think Fields is the pick. I think we need to not get shut out of upside at quarterback.
Totally agree.
And I took too much Anthony Miller, and then a month later I found out he might get cut, so that was bad.
That's the same thing that happened. I fall in love with a new 18th round running back like every few days. Like, Darrington's the only one that has maintained the love from me for an extended period of time. And so I was drafting Justin Jackson for a few days, and ran into the same thing. It's like, I'm just hammering Justin Jackson for 3 days, and the next thing you know, there's an ESPN report. Oh, who's on the chopping block for the Chargers? Justin Jackson.
I don't even understand that. Like, why would you keep Kelly and Roundtree? Justin Jackson's, what he does as a backup to Eckler is way more important than, but yeah, but to your point, that is one of the difficult parts about drafting earlier. How many teams are you in? Because I know you want to do half early. I'm only like 25 teams in right now.
I'm trying to pull it up on the side here really quick. So I just got to 100 in the puppy today, which I'm going to have to take a mini vacation this weekend or something to like reset the brain from that many drafts in a week. And then I think this is my 80th best ball Mania 2. And like, I literally got to the 75, like you and I talked about a while back. I got to the 75 like around 4th of July, and I haven't really been doing any, but then like I'll do these streams or something like that.
It feels like that's worked out for you though, because you got it before the huge ADP shift with the receivers, and it's probably going to get a lot better, come August. So
yeah, I'm happy with that bet in best ball, and then I got to, it actually worked out on all, aspects, because it's not like I got shut out of drafting. They dropped the puppy and like, I can draft as much as I want.
How worried do you get about bye week stuff? I generally don't get too worried, but these round 7 receivers sometimes get a little like, how many same bye week receivers do you care about on a team? Like, just 3, or do you want like at least 4? Or
I would definitely prefer 4, but I really don't worry about it and kind of just let it play out over my entire portfolio and hope it doesn't matter. But I think 4 would be the ideal.
Yeah. Okay, what's that wide receiver here? Not a great wide receiver. I kind of like Manny Sanders here. But
me too. I'm putting him in the queue just so we have something. Tight end bad, and we don't need a tight end.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing running back.
And that's a good quarterback, I guess.
I mean, there is Baker to go with Jarvis and like Hooper's backdoor, but I don't think we need to. Like, it's not enough upside for me to do it now.
Yeah, I think we could wait and, like you said, see if we can get him at a little better value and attach on. What do you think about the Bills thing? You're the perfect person, obviously doing projections and being a Bills fan. What are you doing with the 3 non-Diggs wide receivers?
I've been mixing and matching and drafting all of them ahead of ADP. If Diggs goes down, I think there's huge contingent value for all of them. I think they're all going to have good weeks throughout the year. They might rotate those receivers a little bit more. They were banged up at the end of last year. In general, I like Gabe Davis the most just because, he's the younger player that was someone, you mentioned RotoViz and like Gretsch and ship chasing, like good at identifying prospects. And that was someone that was identified, even before he popped with the Bills, even though he didn't have a lot of draft capital, people were on him. So I like making that bet. I will say the beat writers love Manny Sanders and the Buffalo beats are pretty good. Like anytime with beat writers, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like they're not coming from a fantasy standpoint. It's different. They're not looking at like age-related decline from a macro standpoint. They're looking very micro at what they feel Manny Sanders is, but they're very pro Manny. And he was pretty good when he was on the field last year. And I know Josh Hermsmeyer looked at some speed metrics that said, he hadn't really, maybe I'm mixing. He looked at something. Somebody looked at something with Manny Sanders. Maybe it wasn't Herms. I think Hermsmeyer, that actually might have been Julio's speed he was looking at. But regardless, like he hadn't really slowed down when he was on the field. So I like Manny. I also like, I like Terrace. He's a little bit of a sketchy bet, but that gives us possible Darnold double if we're taking 3 quarterbacks here. I don't mind going Fields and then super gross with like Ben and Darnold late if we have to.
I like that. I like that. And I've been drafting. I started out we can get through this pick and dive into it a little bit more because I'm interested on your super late round quarterback. Hey Marcus, thanks for joining us. I love these. I love these kind of comments. So Terrace goes.
Man.
Terrace goes.
Okay, the gross guy I've been drafting is Perriman.
I get it. I totally get it. Do you typically prefer doing the Perriman type over like Christian Kirk, who Kirk isn't gonna really provide you a ton, but there is a little bit of unknown in their wide receiver room? And like, if we're wrong, like what if Rondale doesn't start, or what if they just play 4 wide receivers the whole time and like he's just in a better offense? How are you balancing those 2 things?
I think Perriman's actually decent, and Goff's got a big arm. Like I know he's not the best quarterback, but I don't know. I think the Perriman ceiling is better than people think. Like I think it's more than just like, oh, this guy's getting targets on a shitty team. Like I think there's some upside there in terms of talent, and yeah, he could get a ton of target. And with Christian Kirk, like we do have evidence. He couldn't get Larry Fitzgerald off the field. Yeah, there's uncertainty there. But I also heard Cliff Kingsbury had a quote where he was talking about Rondale Moore being a good complement to their main 2 receivers and DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green. It seems like he really likes AJ Green. I've been taking AJ Green in round 17.
God, me too. I can't believe I'm disgusted at all of us in the fantasy space that we're doing this AJ Green thing. But I agree. It makes it, other than the fact that he's old and had the worst wide receiver season in the history of the sport of football last year, he makes a lot of sense to me.
And he's a good pairing with like you take AJ Green around 17 and like one of these receivers like Nico Collins, who might be a complete zero, like you get someone that's going to be on the field to start the year in a good offense. And like that's used, like, again, strip away the name, strip away everything. This wide receiver is going to be on the field for a team that's going to run a lot of plays and score a decent amount of points. And there's not a lot of those guys in round 17. So
he can't be worse than Andy Isabella. And I was drafting a whole lot of Andy Isabella.
Exactly.
How do you feel? I guess we're about to come up on the clock here, so let's do that. And then I do want to ask about this.
Can we get Madison? Oh no, I guess we could. The dual bye week's not too bad there.
Week 7 is just a disaster. I've learned to just like try not to worry about week 7 because there's so many guys on bye. Yeah. You're not going to be the only team that struggles with week 7.
How many receivers are we at right now?
We are at 8.
Okay. And what's our
pretty good shape?
What tight ends are there? Okay. I think we can definitely wait here. So I'm between you're just taking Baker here and getting that single stack, and maybe taking Madison and being done with running back, like a fourth guy that's like legitimate upside. Those would probably be my two up. I think I like Baker here, and then we can take.
I think only reason is because I think a lot of these quarterbacks, well, they're all bad. I have started to come around to your side a little bit on Baker having a little more upside maybe than I thought that he did. And I think a guy like I want to just make correlated bets, and not just correlated bets like a stack, like that's what people think about, right? But like Jarvis Landry is a boring wide receiver until they throw more, right? And Baker throws for 4,800 yards when we're all expecting 3,500, but they throw it a little bit more. And that's when Landry, in a really condensed offense, that's when Landry actually does have a ceiling. So I'm trying to think through those things even a little more than just like, okay, yeah, I want to stack my quarter. I mean, of course you want to stack your quarterback and wide receiver, but thinking about it in terms of like the ceiling outcomes, I'm trying to do that a little bit more. And then on the Madison point, I think he's like the same, like kind of the same bet, maybe a little bit higher probability bet than these other guys, but I don't want to force him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and if we did take him, it'd be 4 RBs, and you do have one overlapping bye week, which isn't like super ideal if you only want to take 4. Not to like overthink it too much, but your point about the stacking is good. When I did the stacking data for ETR, that definitely stuck out to me. That like we have to think critically with these things, and like the premium quarterback stacks weren't that big. And that makes sense because generally the opportunity cost at the receivers is a lot higher. And these are guys who run, which means you don't necessarily have to stack them quite as much. And then it was like, as you got your QB2, or in cases where you took QB3, it was better to have like double stacks and stuff. And well, those are generally your boring guys like Ben Roethlisberger who, you know, are feeding. It will be interesting to start seeing stack analysis. It's gonna be harder for me to parse out the data, but stack like non-quarterback stack analysis, you know, next off season, I kind of want to look at a little bit more. It's somewhat annoying to do with the way the data is given from Underdog, but
I have last year's data, and I started to, you know, you're like a billion times, you know, more of an expert in kind of the analytics side and data science side than I am. And I started to kind of parse through some of it, and I was like, screw this. I know like Leone's doing it, Hayden's doing it. I'm just going to wait for you guys to do it because it was miserable to work with.
I did kind of miss Diami Brown. Like him and Fitz are a backdoor stack that I like. We're actually like somewhat okay here at wide receiver. Like we hit that lull in the mid-teens, but it seems like it's come back for us. Have you drafted any St. Brown? That's a guy I haven't been on, but I don't know if I should be drafting more of.
I was a little bit early just to like, it's the same thing. You fall in love with little things here and there. Like Jack wrote about it and other people wrote about it. Like when I'm getting to these spots, just like taking the rookie kind of thing, even though I don't really have any strong takes on him or St. Brown, I would just be like, okay, I'm here. I hate all these guys. I'll take the rookie.
Yeah. So the guy I always take is I've got a big thing for Eskridge.
Oh yeah, baby.
That's the guy I'm almost always taking in this spot. And you talk about lashing on little things. It just makes so much sense to me. You know, he's a big play guy. I know he wasn't great in college, but what he was good at was down the field. You're playing with the best deep passer, arguably in NFL history, in Russell Wilson. And I mean, I don't know how much contingent value you have. Like, would he step into more role? But there's at least some uncertainty there. So he's been my favorite late there. Neil is not on the Eskridge train.
I don't know if Neil's not on it or if he's in here and was trying to set up a.
Okay.
I don't know if he is. I don't know. Neil. This.
Either that or he just really doesn't like Eskridge.
Really doesn't like him. I kind of. So this is here we go. That's where I think, and sometimes I fall into a little bit of a too much of like natural contrarian, but you get the football guys, right? And like it's really funny because I was like a football guy. Like I played football, and that's like where my background comes from, not like this galaxy brain stuff. But we fall so in love with, like it happened last year with the wide receivers changing teams, this narrative, right? And it's the same thing we do with like, oh, he's an old prospect. And like, I get it. I'm not saying I want to bet on all of those guys, but like, you can't dream up a better situation for a guy like Eskridge to fall in. So I understand that maybe you knock his probability of being a long-term hit down, but that doesn't take away from the upside that he has, for this particular game that we're playing, this best ball game that we're playing.
Yeah, 100%. And the market's just gotten so much sharper that some of this stuff's baked in. And you
True.
I know we were joking about the Melvin Gordon thing, but my thing to Davis was like, at a certain point, you have to at least ask yourself the question, or you're doing yourself a disservice. When we have a tight end, is Hooper there?
Yep.
I like Hooper, get the double stack. Possible we only need to go 2 quarterbacks even, although I'd probably take Darnold. Or I don't know. What do you think?
I still like to only take. This is an awesome comment, by the way, from Jacob Classic Leone. That's pretty.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, once upon a time, this is a fairly true point. I think Calvin Ridley turned out okay, but with Fields, I think if we get to the point in camp where we feel really certain he's not going to start the season, my opinion might change at that time. But I would just like to give myself outs to having 2 QB Fields teams in case he does start. Because like, what's the worst thing that happens? You take Baker's 15 points every week for the first few weeks, and like, okay, you lost a little bit of points that you might have been able to make up with Big Ben or whatever, but you don't even know that Big Ben's going to make up very many points for you in those weeks anyway. So I'm just kind of like cost benefit analysis, right? I don't know that the benefit is worth the roster spot.
Yeah, I'm good with 2. It's about, if we had gone like Fields Darnold, then I probably want a third, where I think it's a little shakier. Does it hurt you that Darrington Evans went? I was gonna say, is it gonna hurt you that we like can't take Darrington Evans?
Yeah, that's why I don't take Henry. I don't take Henry because I can't take Darrington late.
So I like Kenny Gainwell. I haven't drafted much Hubbard, and I don't know if that's a mistake. It feels like such pure contingent value, and then I don't even know if he's the right guy after that. So I've had a tough time with Hubbard. I feel pretty good about Gainwell.
Can I sell you on?
Yeah.
Can I? So I'll sell you on Hubbard or Damian Williams. I was actually going to sell you on Damian Williams. When we have Justin Fields, it's kind of this again, like making a bet on, okay, if David Montgomery goes down, obviously Damian Williams benefits from that. But in theory, they're going to throw more. Maybe Fields even runs a little bit more. And so it's just kind of this like, okay, if Montgomery goes down, in theory, that elevates Fields and it elevates Damian at the same time, as opposed to having to get 2 different things right.
Yeah. In a vacuum, I like Damian Williams. So I'm cool with Damian.
I do like Chuba. What do you think about?
And Damian has a bit more ceiling than Cohen because if something happens to Montgomery, that's Damian comes in. Whereas Cohen's like, there is a little bit of a mesh bet with Fields on Cohen, but the ceiling individually is capped. Whereas Damian, you kind of get like the best of both worlds.
And maybe I'm being too stubborn. Like a little bit of some of the news, like Cohen's not even right yet. Like his knee is still struggling. And I think it's just legitimately possible that it's like over for Cohen. And Damian's like a really, really good passing down back. Like that's what he was actually good at with the Chiefs. That's why he smashed, was because he was such a good passing down back. So I think it's possible he plays a real role like week 1 right away out of the gate. So I kind of like that bet. The other thing, Chuba is a question that I wanted to ask you. Like, so I have this like working idea that like the entire league is going away from the workhorse back. And so, I mean, it pretty much happens more and more every single season. And we might get to a point that like, it doesn't even exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really know what that means in terms of like snap percentages or touch percentages, but I think we're trending that way. And so like, I'm trying to get out ahead of that in terms of my running back construction and being more open to taking these guys that look like they're stone zeros unless they get an injury, like Chuba, like Darrington Evans, like Samaje Perine, right? We perceive them as absolute zeros. But do you see, have you looked at any data or anything that where maybe some of these running backs have a little bit more of a role than we think, or you're trying to project them for more of a role moving forward?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I think that's part of the problem with swinging for only upside at running back late, is that people aren't stepping into workhorse roles. They're going to treat it differently in the rare situations where the workhorse role even is. So I think that makes sense. I think Chuba specifically, like, might not be the best example, but I think like Madison's a really good example where like there were times last year where Madison was getting like 20% of the carries, you know.
We're on that real quick. Do you have we're on
Donovan Peoples-Jones, DPJ.
Okay, perfect. So you had that ready to roll. I like it.
Pat just showed me a draft he did with DPJ late. There's been some camp buzz. I like it. We get the Odell re-injury. We're rolling. But yeah, I do think there's something to that where these guys at a certain point, like, do you care if a guy scores 8 points or like 5, right? Like, you're just avoiding the 0 in your lineup, and the guys with 5 have more contingent value and upside beyond that. And like those 3 points on a week aren't going to do anything for your line. Like, it's not going to matter at the end of the day. So, but I don't know. I do think the league is moving that way. It's been hard for me to strategize how to impact. The way it's impacted my drafting, I guess, the most is I'm more open, and Jack Miller did research to this. Guys that seem like they might not have great upside but have some role late. Yeah. Like, I think those guys that seem like maybe they're mega boring might be a little bit better than people think, just because there's guys with pure contingent value that are being drafted who might not even have the workhorse role when the injury happens. So why not take the guy who at least has a role already?
Right. And it's such a weird dynamic. And that's when, like I was talking about earlier, we have no idea what the right answer is to this. And we may not even know next year, but like, I'm going to be so fascinated to kind of look into that thing. Like you mentioned, like not just, you know, stacking, not just like specific player win rates, but like, I want to see like archetypes of players, you know, and all that kind of thing. And what was working and what were people doing, because that's the one thing, like, I feel good about a lot of the things you and I talk about, a lot of the things other really smart people have written about in terms of fragility and structure and all that. Like, I feel comfortable with all of that. What I don't have any idea, and I don't think anybody has any idea, is this concept, like, that we're talking about, right? Like the correlated ceilings and like, you know, when Derrick Henry goes down, like, that's one of my bets, right? Okay, if Derrick Henry goes down, what happens to that offense? Same thing. I'm betting on this idea of like, oh, there is no such thing as a workhorse running back anymore. But like, my application of it is like different than Jack's, for example. We could actually like both be right, and one of us is going to be really, really wrong, you know? And so that's what I'm really fascinated to kind of see moving forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where we're like aligned macro, and then, but like, we might implement it a little bit differently. I'm really fascinated to look at like distribution stuff, where my big thing is like, how do we squeeze the most points of our roster, where if a guy has a good week, he's in our roster, we're not wasting points on our bench, but like, and then the flip side is like, we're not getting very many zeros in our starting lineup. Like, how do we just squeeze that for all it's worth? And like, can we even, like, maybe we can't even, like, maybe there's a point where it's just too random and we can't, but I want to look like, try to like, and that goes back to like player archetypes and the correlation stuff. Like, how do we squeeze as much as possible out of distributions? Yes, it's random. Yes, it's chaotic, but like, chaotic things working together, you know, theory of large numbers, you know, more times than not, you know, that's kind of the thesis behind hyperfragile and, you know, the quantity of receivers late. You know, I know it's changed a little bit this year, but those distributions of those shitty wide receivers, the few weeks that they score or whatever, like, it's going to work out for you.
It's the thesis behind zero RBs, you know, a little bit different, but like anchor, hero, whatever. And it's like, okay, I got one position, right? Taking those points, and now I'm letting the chaos work for me at the other position through these guys, right? It's the same thing as hyperfragile, just using it a different, like doing it at a different position. So same thing. I'm totally fascinated. I do just want to talk about this team really quick, because it's so funny. Like, you know, you and I could come on, and like you said, we take different routes to the same place. Like that's what happens all the time in this. And so like, this is a team that like, I haven't drafted a team like this. I don't take the big dog that much. I don't stack the Browns like ever, almost ever really. I don't take Detroit Lions. Like, I don't do I don't do some of these things. But if you just remove the name and you were like, yep, 2, 4, 10, 2, got the upside rookie quarterback, got the anchor running back, got ETN as your bet, got Rojo fits this team, whatever. You look like structurally at all of it. I'm like, dude, I love that. I love this team. So like I want to have these in my portfolio too.
Yeah, we really only got squeezed bad at the Rondell pick at receiver.
Yep.
And if you're going to do that, taking a potential breakout guy like him is probably the way to do it.
Yeah, as you start to do some more drafts in this new shit show of an environment, that's what you're going to find out is when you get to round 9, you're deciding between Rondale and Elijah and Darnell Mooney and Jarvis Landry. And those are the guys you gotta think about there. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. I know you gotta get going here. Is there anything? What are you working on? What are we gonna pump from ETR? The season's getting close. I assume you guys are like in full gear right now.
Yeah, we're full gear. We got our underdog rankings updating every single day. Check those out. We bake in the ADP a little bit into our ranks, and that's constantly evolving. And I think that helps because like you have to be somewhat in touch with the market. Like there's a break-even point where like if you're too far away from the market, you're in trouble. But if you're like the right amount away from the market, like that's where you really maximize your edge. So I'm pumped about that. Once the season rolls around, we'll have all our DFS content. Dick and I do establish the million on Saturday. So I'm itching to play some DFS because I haven't played as much MLB and NBA as I have in the past. So definitely feeling it for this year for football. I think I lost Eric right at the close. Eric, are you there?
Looks like we lost Leone.
Me. I don't know if we lost me. I lost you. I'm here.
I don't know. I lost both of us.
Uh-oh. Well, I don't know if you guys can hear me or hear Eric. So if you can hear me and not Eric, draft lots of running backs early is what Eric's favorite strategy is. He wants you to take Josh Jacobs.
I don't know if it's working.
6. So
okay. Am I back? Can you hear me? Did you take over and tout every single person that I hate? Is that what just happened?
Yes, that's what happened. I
figured. Don't take Darrington Evans, take Josh Jacobs, take James White and print some money. And that I just summarized the ETR draft guide if you want to go get that. But no, thanks Mike. We'll wrap it up since I'm clearly having some internet issues. Thank you for coming. Thanks guys for joining us. That was a lot of fun, and we will be back. I will be back next week. I'm sure Mike is putting out a ton of other great content over the course of the next week. I will be back again next Thursday for another draft. Until then, we will catch you later. Thanks guys. See ya.